They warned them twice. The US Navy vessel kept moving. Then Iran fired. Iranian media claims 2 missiles struck an American naval vessel near Jask Island, hours after Trump launched Project Freedom, and right after Tehran promised to shoot first and answer questions never. The Strait of Hormuz is no longer a warning, it's a war zone. The war of words is over, and Hormuz is already burning. According to Iran's semi-state Fars news agency, the IRGC has fired 2 missiles at a US Navy vessel near Jask Island. If true, this would mark the most serious escalation in the Strait of Hormuz since tensions boiled over earlier this year. The agency, citing local sources, reported that the American vessels had ignored repeated warnings from the Revolutionary Guards to halt before it was struck. Following the attack, Iranian state media claimed the American vessel retreated from its position. The US Central Command categorically denied the Iranian claim, saying,
Iranian state media claims that Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps hit a US warship with 2 missiles. No US Navy ships have been struck. US forces are supporting Project Freedom and enforcing the naval blockade on Iranian ports.
The vessel was reportedly moving near Jask Island, in violation of what Iran described as security and navigation rules, when the Revolutionary Guards issued their warnings. It pressed on. 2 missiles followed, burning through the air, and with them, perhaps blew the hopes of a consolidated ceasefire between the 2 countries. The reported strike came hours after US President Donald Trump launched what he called Project Freedom, a military-backed operation to escort stranded commercial vessels through the strait. US Central Command had committed 15,000 personnel, more than 100 land and sea-based aircraft, warships and drones to the effort. Iran had been explicit about what would follow. Earlier in the day, the Khatam al-Anbiya Joint Military Command warned that any foreign forces, particularly the US military, would be targeted if they attempted to approach or enter the waterway. Tehran's foreign ministry backed that position, with spokesman Esmail Baghaei telling reporters the same day that Iran's armed forces knew precisely how to respond. Notably, 1/5 of the world's oil supply passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has controlled passage through the waterway since February 28th, when hostilities with the US and Israel began. What happens next, few are willing to say. A fragile ceasefire may be holding on the surface, but beneath the waters of the Gulf, a new and deeply unsettling threat is emerging. Iran is considering unconventional methods to challenge a United States military blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, including the possible use of dolphins armed with mines, the Wall Street Journal reported. As economic pressure mounts in Tehran, fears are growing that the next phase of this confrontation could come from beneath the sea. The strategic waterway has been under a financially crippling American military blockade for weeks, severely restricting Iran's oil exports and increasing pressure on the country's economy. While an extended and tense ceasefire between Washington and Tehran remains in place, anger is reportedly rising among Iranian hardliners. A growing number now believe that the blockade amounts to an act of war, despite the absence of direct, large-scale fighting. Those voices are said to be urging Iran's leadership to resume military action rather than continue absorbing the economic damage caused by the restrictions. The reported dolphin plan would represent one of the most unusual tactics considered in the standoff. According to Iranian officials cited in the report by WSJ, mine-carrying dolphins could be used to strike American naval vessels deployed in the region. The report also says Tehran could send submarines into the waterway as part of a broader escalation strategy. Any such move in the Strait of Hormuz would immediately raise global alarm, given the route's importance to international energy supplies and maritime trade. the Strait of Hormuz remains one of the most strategically vital choke points in the world. A significant share of global oil shipments passes through the narrow corridor, making any military disruption there a matter of worldwide concern. But the reported threats do not end at sea traffic. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard has also threatened to cut key communications cables running through the strait. Those undersea cables are essential for international telecommunications and internet connectivity. Damage to them could disrupt global data flows, affect financial systems, and increase pressure far beyond the Middle East. Analysts say the economic pain caused by the blockade is changing calculations inside Tehran. Hamidreza Azizi, a visiting fellow specializing in the Middle East at the Berlin-based research institute SWP, told the Wall Street Journal.
The blockade is increasingly viewed in Tehran not as a substitute for war, but as a different manifestation of it. As a result, Iranian decision-makers may soon come to see renewed conflict as less costly than continuing to endure a prolonged blockade.
He added that Iranian decision-makers may soon conclude that renewed conflict is less costly than continuing to endure a prolonged blockade. That assessment points to a dangerous shift. If economic strangulation is seen as war by another name, the political barriers to escalation may begin to weaken. So far, the ceasefire has prevented a wider regional conflict. However, the combination of financial pressure, military deployments, and increasingly aggressive rhetoric suggests the situation remains highly volatile. "6 months. That's how long the Pentagon believes it could take to clear Iranian mines from the Strait of Hormuz, and that timeline wouldn't even begin until after a war with Iran ends." According to 3 officials cited by the Wall Street Journal, the assessment, delivered during a classified briefing on Capitol Hill on April 21st, left lawmakers from both parties frustrated. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway in the Persian Gulf, is the artery through which roughly 20% of the world's oil flows. Before the war began in February, it was one of the most critical shipping corridors on the planet. Right now, it is a minefield. Iran reportedly placed 20 or more mines in and around the strait, some of which floated remotely using GPS technology, which has made detection significantly harder. Others were laid by Iranian small boats. Officials say helicopters, drones, and explosive ordnance disposal divers are all being considered for a clearing operation, but none of it can begin in earnest while the conflict continues. US President Donald Trump, for his part, posted on Truth Social last week that Iran has removed, or is removing, all sea mines. The Pentagon, however, told a very different story behind closed doors just days later. Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell issued a brief statement calling the Washington Post's reporting inaccurate. But that denial has done little to calm markets or reassure the dozens of countries now scrambling to reroute energy supplies. Even if a peace agreement were reached tomorrow, the physical work of reopening the strait would only just begin. That is the part of this story that does not get enough attention. On April 22nd, Iran made its position equally clear. Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament and the country's lead negotiator, posted on X, saying reopening the strait was, in his words, impossible.
A complete ceasefire only makes sense if it is not violated by the maritime blockade and the hostage-taking of the world's economy, and if the Zionist warmongering across all fronts is halted. Reopening the Strait of Hormuz is impossible with such a flagrant breach of the ceasefire. They did not achieve their goals through military aggression, nor will they through bullying. The only way forward is to recognize the rights of the Iranian nation.
The same day, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps seized 2 ships attempting to cross the strait, the Panama-flagged MSC Francesca and the Liberia-flagged Epaminondas. It was the first time Iran had taken control of vessels since the war began. The ceasefire announced on April 8th has clearly frayed. Trump has unilaterally extended it, saying Iran's leadership is seriously fractured and needs to come up with a unified proposal. Iranian authorities, as of April 22nd, had given no signal they would attend a second round of talks in Islamabad, where a luxury hotel had been cleared out and prepared for negotiations that never happened.